Welcome, ladies and gents. It's Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter, or of course you can subscribe to the channel. Loads to talk about today. Where better a place to start than GENNADY GOLOVKIN and Canelo Alvarez. Golovkin is continuing his role of full-on troll. I'm absolutely loving it. He's got it right under the skin of Canelo Alvarez. Canelo's fuming. He really wants to hurt him. And Golovkin started to remind me a little bit of Amir Khan and how he was with Kell Brook. And I find it hilarious, to be honest. He's just poking at the bear. It did not end too well for Amir Khan. Golovkin will be hoping for a different outcome, but in the meantime, he's having a whole lot of fun. He came out and he said, Saul is really angry with Bivol, not with me, but he wants to blame me. I don't care what Canelo says or what he does. The truth is, I only tell you not to underestimate me, and that without a doubt, the issue of age is just a number. I'm taking this very seriously. I know about my legacy. I know what will be written in boxing and what will remain for future generations, but without a doubt, when the time comes, I will surely enjoy talking to my grandchildren about what I did and left as a legacy in the ring. Many Mexicans love me, and nobody in Kazakhstan loves Canelo. His little comments that he's dropping, you know, in a way it's just teasing him. It's just saying, there's a lot of your countrymen that love me, Canelo. And, for many, many years, the rumors were that because he wasn't as loved as Chavez Sr., and that a lot of Mexicans wanted Chavez Jr. to beat him, for instance, because of their love for Chavez, that he didn't quite establish himself as the true darling of Mexican boxing. He has grown since then, for sure, in popularity even more. So maybe that's changing, but he does know that there were a lot of Mexican fans, a minority of course, who also really loved Golovkin. The whole Mexican style thing, there were a lot that loved him, and that must irk Canelo a little bit. And he's right that nobody in Kazakhstan supporting Canelo. So basically what he's saying is, ultimately, what I've achieved in boxing will last forever, and globally, I'm a bigger star than you. Maybe in America, maybe in Mexico, people know you, they love you, but elsewhere, I'm the man. And he's just poking a little bit at Canelo, and I just find it all hilarious. Brilliant little build-up. He's trying to turn into a super villain and prodded, but he's doing it in such a funny way that he's not even coming across as a bad guy. It's just hilarious. But let me know what you think about this. How is this going to bode for Canelo Alvarez? Is he going to get too wound up? Is he going to lose his game plan? Moving on from that, let's talk about Deontay Wilder. Now, we're all excited, I'm sure, by the return of Deontay Wilder. You know he's going to bring entertainment. You know he's going to bring excitement with that firepower. But there's another way that he brings entertainment too, and that's some of the outlandish things this dude comes out with. You can't help but laugh. Well, he's come out with another absolute clanger. He has come out and he said in an interview, I think Fury will be too big for Alexander Usyk. He just likes to use his size all the time and a lot of other things, and I think Usyk is just too small. So up until this point, that's fair enough. He likes to use his size, he's too big, he's going to maul him. I get it, that's cool. Then he goes on to say, and I think Usyk has stamina problems as well. What? Alexander Usyk is practically a marathon runner. That dude, at the end of the first AJ fight, do you remember that little dance he was doing that you can see on screen there? It's a Russian, I think, or perhaps Ukrainian, certainly that part of the world, folk dance where he gets all the way down, squats down low with his legs, and then jumps up and kicks one leg to the side and repeats it and does the other leg. And they do this on numerous occasions. If your legs have turned to jelly and you've run out of stamina, there's no way you're doing these sorts of things. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't actually think Alexander Usyk has genuinely ever lost a championship round. 10, 11 or 12, I don't think he's ever lost those rounds in any fights. It's where he comes on so strong. He downloads a lot of data early in a fight whilst putting you under incessant foot pressure and pressure with feints and movement, getting you to react. Once he starts to read your patterns, he starts to go to work. You've spent a long time reacting to the things that he's doing. And then in the last 3 rounds, when you're getting tired, he really starts to put his foot on the gas. So I'm not sure what Deontay Wilder is talking about here. Let me know what you think about this. But this is not the only thing. He said that Anthony Joshua tried to lock him in as an insurance fight because they knew that he wasn't going to win against Usyk. This is strictly business, not a sport. There's a difference. Now, what is he saying here exactly? That they tried to get him to accept a fight against AJ prior to him fighting Alexander Usyk. In other words, if they thought that Anthony Joshua was going to win, they as in Matchroom and DAZN, if they thought that Anthony Joshua was going to win, they would have sought to secure a fight against Tyson Fury for undisputed. Instead, he's saying, they sought to make a fight against him, almost like an insurance policy, because by doing that, well, you also get other benefits, don't you? Because you're starting to negotiate still from a position of power. Whereas if you lose to Usyk, maybe your stock falls a little bit more and things change a little bit. So maybe this is what Deontay Wilder is trying to say here. Okay, let's say that's true, for example. Well, if that's true, then now surely you're ready, Deontay, to go back into negotiations. You didn't accept that lockdown sort of move. So now that he's lost, and you know he's lost, and you don't have to worry about him coming to negotiations from a position of strength. Well, now you can negotiate and make the fight, right? But instead, we're getting Helenius against Deontay Wilder, which as a comeback fight is fine. On paper, it looks decent. They have sparred together an awful lot in the past in preparation for his fight against Tyson Fury. I can't imagine Deontay Wilder wanting to take a risk against a guy that he might think he'd lose against. You know, if you've sparred him that much, you must have seen enough to know that I've got this in the bag. You know, it'll be very unlikely for me to lose this fight. So he's clearly going to feel confident about that. After that, though, why wouldn't he want to make the Anthony Joshua fight? But the thing is, he also went on to say, the meltdown comes from when you create such a fighter. You give them everything. You try to avoid tough fights, and then it boils down to the wire and you don't know who to trust. You've been listening to all this fake stuff. What? Let's not forget that Deontay Wilder admitted inadvertently in a tweet to Tyson Fury back in 2020. When that fight was a draw, I told you that I would give you a rematch. You know I was offered more money to fight Joshua than I was getting to fight you. Again, being a man of my word, I fought you like I said I would. Wait, what? You see what I'm saying, Deontay? You're admitting here that you were offered more money to fight AJ and you chose to fight Fury. Why? Because you knew Fury was out for a very long time, abusing his body. He came back and you thought he was washed. It was a cherry gone wrong. So I'm not questioning the abilities of Deontay Wilder. The man's got dog in him. He's a warrior. He's a huge puncher. The fact that he's tall as well. But who are you kidding when you talk about AJ wanting to avoid fighters? Deontay Wilder's best wins are who? Bermane Stiverne in the first fight. Forget the second fight. He was totally washed. So Bermane Stiverne in the first fight and Luis Ortiz twice. Well, if you consider Anthony Joshua, I mean, it's a list of who's who over the last X amount of years in the heavyweight division. Joseph Parker, Andy Ruiz, Alexander Povetkin, Dillian White, Vladimir Klitschko, Carlos Takam. Even the guys that are considered gimme wins like Brazil, who Deontay Wilder also fought, and Charles Martin, they were undefeated when AJ fought them. The only unavenged defeat he has is Alexander Usyk. He tried to make the Fury fight. Fury agreed to that fight too. And then what happened? Bob Arum dropped the ball. So you can't tell me that Anthony Joshua is out here ducking people. Come on now. But listen, let's not just put it on Deontay Wilder. Tyson Fury seems to have lost the plot a little bit too. He's decided to go full on WWE heel again. He's chatting all sorts of breeze and trash talking. He's proper going for it. First and foremost, he's been asking for $500 million again to fight Alexander Usyk. Now listen, if this was to truly be the case, yes, we could put it down to a duck. If you're asking for $500 million to fight Alexander Usyk, it means you're pricing yourself out of the fight and you don't want to fight him. Personally, I think it's just Tyson being Tyson, and it may be an auction type tactic, you know, the sort of tactic whereby you demand more than you're expecting to get because you know somebody's then going to bring you down and so on and so forth. And he has been trash talking in various videos. So I actually think Tyson Fury has a real intention of fighting Alexander Usyk, and he's simply begun the psychological warfare. Let's talk about exactly what he said in the interview with TalkSport, though. He said of Alexander Usyk, all of the pound-for-pound legendary status stuff, I don't rate him. He will get a good hiding, let me tell you. I could beat Usyk on a week's training because he's a middleweight. I'll put my fist right through him. It's an easy fight. In terms of his fight at the weekend, I've seen more excitement in Morecambe on a Friday night. Without being disrespectful to Joshua, he's found his level. He's lost 3 of his last 5, so clearly he's come up wanting at a high level. This Alex Usyk guy, pretending he doesn't know his name, he needs the legendary Gypsy King. I don't need him. I've done what I've done. I'm a legend in the game. He needs me. Some foreigner who no one can say his name. We'll get back to that bit in a moment because this has caused a bit of a furor online, but I think there's reasons that he's saying these things. There's tactical reasons. We'll get to that in a moment. He goes on to say, it ain't my fault. He's just gone and battered AJ. It ain't my fault that's happened twice in a row. I haven't got to live with it. Oh, a middleweight set about me. I haven't got to live with that. AJ does. There's only ever been me. They try to compete, and when they compete, they get to the highest level and they lose. It's no disrespect to Joshua. He's 24-3, but at world-class boxing, he just can't cut it. So here he is again, getting really deep into Anthony Joshua, but he didn't just stay on AJ. When he saw that Deontay Wilder started giving interviews, he started setting about him too. Tell that Dawson to get to the back of the queue with the rest of the losers. Don't forget the last time we saw this bum, he needed to be scraped off the canvas in Vegas. So he's got some verbal smoke for pretty much everybody in the vicinity. Tyson Fury, he seems to be up for it, at least verbally, and I'm pretty sure that that's going to play out with a fight in the ring eventually. And indeed, he has gotten Alexander Usyk to bite up. I'm not saying this has had a negative effect on Usyk. It might have just rubbed off the dude like he's made of Teflon. Nonetheless, he did say in the post-fight press conference, tell Tyson Fury I'm going to whoop his ass. He also said previously in an interview, Tyson Fury's scared of me. He's afraid of me. When have we really seen Alexander Usyk speak like that? He just might be meeting fire with fire verbally, and he will remain very controlled. He does seem very stoic, very level-headed, shall we say, when it comes to his personality. A lot of people have tried to get under his skin in a variety of ways, and they haven't managed it. But what Tyson Fury might be thinking here is a few different things. First and foremost, this guy's a fantastic mover, and he wants to continually change angles on me. I don't want him to do that. I'd rather he stays in the pocket. And that doesn't mean he would lose if Usyk decides to box and move and pivot and change angles, but he will be very slippery. And Tyson Fury's hardest tests tend to be with guys that are difficult movers, like Cunningham. He also had a difficult night against the southpaw, Otto Wallin. There have been sparring rumours that he struggled with the likes of Michael Hunter and Jared Anderson. Again, either small heavyweight in Hunter or a very fluid one who's again not particularly big. He's about 6'4" in Jared Anderson, not only an inch taller than Alexander Usyk. So maybe Tyson Fury's looking at this and thinking, I'd prefer it if I was able to really rile this geezer up. He might start to say more outlandish things. And listen, it may be distasteful, it may be classless to a lot of people, but tactically, if it works for him and it ends up being an undisputed title win as a result, he'll probably take that. Yeah, let people see me as the villain. Let people see me as the heel. The fact of the matter is, I became undisputed. He's no stranger to saying controversial things. And maybe one of the comments regarding the foreigner, this is the guy that nobody knows his name. Well, maybe he's just meaning it from the perspective of a business sense that, you know, he's a foreign fighter that doesn't have a massive appeal over here. So he's not exactly going to be a pay-per-view star. But a lot of people have found that distasteful too. Now, is it possible that the reason he's doing this is because he needs to feel like he needs to get up for it? He needs to get up for the fight. So if he can turn himself into a villain, into a heel, and the trash talking can start, he can start to train in a different manner. Or is it possible that he's doing this for other tactical reasons? You have to understand, from the country that Usyk's from right now, it's in the news constantly, and there's a lot of sympathy going from the British Isles to the people of the Ukraine. Now, with that in mind, maybe Tyson Fury is looking at this and thinking, hold on a sec, I need to be considered the main guy here. I need to be the champion, the people's champion, at least a segment of society. Because if I am going to turn this into a dirty fight, and I end up winning as a result of turning it into a dirty fight, where I'm breaking his construct, leaning on him, mauling him, hitting him low and stuff like that, I want a significant segment of the public to be backing me rather than... So by making the point of this guy some foreigner that no one knows how to say his name, it could just be a reference to business, or it could be a way of saying, come and back your champion, I'm your champion, I'm the people's champion. This guy's just somebody from abroad who's coming to take the belts away, which might explain why in another video he said the worst thing about the whole AJ saga is that he just gave the belts back to the Ukraine after all the hard work that I did to get him off him. So now the Gypsy King's got to come back and take them back from them. You see what I'm saying? So it's almost like he's trying to tap into national allegiances here. Again, all these little things are mind games. They're things which seek to sway both public opinion in his favour and to potentially get into the head of Alexander Usyk. Whether it works or not, I find it interesting that the war games have begun, mentally speaking. And he has been sparring today, as you can see here, with some really good fighters. He's been sparring, of course, with Martin Bakole. He's been sparring with Joseph Parker. And he's been sparring with an Icelandic giant of a fighter, Kolbeinn Christensen. So while Usyk is still recovering, you could argue, after a very difficult fight, I'm sure he's very banged up and bruised and painful ribs. He's still got those black eyes. He's going to spend a few days, take some time off, spend time with his family. While he's doing all that, Tyson Fury's out here getting ahead of the curve and started training and hard sparring with some top fighters. So it makes you think that he is taking this seriously and that the fight will occur, which is a great sign, of course. And that would then make sense that he's engaging in psychological warfare and he's starting to invest in that too. There have been another couple of fights that have been announced. Really good fights. We've got Leigh Wood and Mauricio Lara on a really good card from Matchroom. You know, Mauricio Lara absolutely decimated Josh Warrington in the first fight. And in the past, I gave the analogy of it being like a motorcycle on a mountaintop having to face a hurricane. You know that he's this superbike, Josh Warrington. Really fast, a frenetic whirl of energy and power, but you don't have much protection on the superbike. So when that hurricane comes along, it could easily push you off the edge of the cliff. Well, Leigh Wood is not a superbike in that way. Leigh Wood is more of a Mack truck. He doesn't have the pizzazz, he doesn't have the special effects, but he hits very, very hard. And that's what makes this fight very interesting, because Mauricio Lara likes to overload with shots. He'll bring shots up from off the floor, so the arc of his punches are very wide. If he's getting caught in between those punches by Leigh Wood, it's not the same thing as getting caught by Josh Warrington. So Wood is not tailor-made for Lara in the way that Warrington was. This makes it a much more interesting fight. Needless to say, Emmanuel Navarrete has said that he's never been hit as hard as he's been hit by Mauricio Lara. So this is a fight where you're really likely to see a knockout. You've also got Rankin and Harper on the card. Another great one on the undercard is Maxi Hughes against Kid Galahad. So it's a really good, interesting card. We've also got Hughie Fury against Michael Hunter. Fury's a guy who's loose, languid and tall, and he relies a lot on his movement. The movement of Hunter, though, to enter the pocket is very, very quick, and he can get up on your chest and throw hard, powerful shots where he's fully extending his arm, where he's still quite close to you. He punches through the target whilst up close. It's quite an unusual trajectory of punch, but he's very effective with it. So this is a really interesting fight, and you can imagine that whoever comes out on top gets an opportunity at a much bigger name after that. So that's what I want to see. We've also got Murat Gassiev coming back this weekend in a fight he should be winning. A monstrous left hook. The Iron Man, I'm really looking forward to seeing him back, because he's another one where we keep forgetting about. I spoke to Jamie Bourne yesterday. You guys have still got to vote on the forfeit, by the way, for Jamie. But nonetheless, we were speaking and we were talking about all these sharks on the periphery and what sort of heavyweights could come to the fore. But I forgot to talk about Gassiev. He's always in that situation where he's out of sight, out of mind. And yet he's got the power whereby if he lands a clean left hook on someone, they're in serious trouble. So it'll be good to see him back. So there are a lot of good fights to catch up on. Finally, let's talk a little bit about George Kambosos. He said he'll put everything into the ring this time around, and that if he loses, though, he will not go back to fighting domestic level fighters in Australia, because he's always been a guy that's taken risks and sought to fight the best, and that's what he sought to do with Devin Haney. Well, first and foremost, I think it's a bit worrying that he said, you know, if I lose, that shouldn't be going through his mind at all. But then he goes on to say later on in the press conference, perhaps will be the last time you see George Kambosos, or perhaps you'll see me return with all the belts, which is a hint at retirement. Now, prior to the first fight, it did cross my mind that this guy was spending a lot of the money that he had made. You'd see him buying a sports car, jewelry, stuff like that, and I wondered, is there retirement playing on this guy's mind? Is he looking to cash out? And I dismissed it because Kambosos has always been such a warrior, and I don't believe that necessarily that hunger cost him at all. But what he did say, which I found interesting, is that when there's a rematch clause in place, you ultimately think of it as an insurance policy, and so you don't see it as a do or die type of scenario. Whereas now he says, I'm 29 and it is do or die. So he is perhaps suggesting that he didn't have the same level of edge that he used to have, and he used to say, you know, I became the emperor for a while, well, now it's time to be who I was before, ferocious. Did the fame get to him? Did he start to believe his own hype? Well, Teddy Atlas certainly believes so, because he was saying that during the fight, he was far too accepting of Devin Haney clinching him. He allowed it to happen without him fighting to free himself. Now, that's something I spoke about too, but I didn't see it from the potential of a lack of hunger. I just saw it from the potential of terrible tactics and not being prepared enough to stop the clinch from a tactical or technical perspective. But maybe Teddy Atlas is right. Maybe this guy mentally is thinking about the aftermath, life after boxing. And let me know where you think he is mentally, regardless of how you think the fight will go. Maybe you think Devin Haney's going to school him again. That's not what I'm asking. The consensus is it's an easy Devin Haney win. I get that. I'm asking you, though, about the mentality of Kambosos. I appreciate you guys. I thank you all for watching. Please don't forget to hit a stiff jab on the like button, a right cross on the subscribe button, and an uppercut on the notifications button. Take care. God bless.